I think we had some very interesting papers before tea that told us about the efforts at national government level in relation to regeneration and the changing climate in the economy, but also quite a lot about local initiatives. I think now we'll be getting even more nitty-gritty in the next three presentations, a bit more detail about experience in Japan and more detail about experience in this part of the world in Derbyshire. So I'll move us on to our first presentation. I'd like to introduce Dr. Peter Matanle at the School of East Asian Studies at the University of Sheffield. I was a student at the University of Sheffield in the dark ages a long time ago. So he's bound to give a good presentation because he's from the University of Sheffield. Okay, Peter, over to you.
Thank you very much. Just like to say to start with, it's a great honour to be asked to come to present in Derbyshire. I don't live in Derbyshire, I live in Sheffield, but I've spent in the past 12 years so many lovely, relaxing, enjoyable days in Derbyshire with my wife and family, all over the county. It really is a wonderful and lovely place to be in Derbyshire and all the welcome you're always receive. It's also interesting to come today because of the twinning relationship with Toyota City. I first went to Japan in 1989 and I worked in local schools in a very small village in the mountains in a place called Tokushima. But sometime after that I became involved a little bit in local government administration and the twinning program in Japan, or the sister cities program they call it as well, because they have a lot of relationships obviously with local authorities in the United States, and it was a very, very interesting time. And thank you also to Mr. Kishima for his very nice presentation today, which introduced quite a lot of the themes, in a general sense, introduced many of the themes I want to talk about today. So it's really nice to come after him. Thank you for such a nice talk. So today, really, I want to talk about an area of Japan that hasn't been experiencing a good time of late. It might seem like it's kind of a depressing or an unhappy tale, but actually it isn't. Because I want to finish on an optimistic note and to talk about some ways in which the local authority and the people in this area are trying to establish independence for themselves and to turn things around, or at least establish some kind of community stability in their area. And I think they've got some very good ideas, and one of which I want to talk about today, or stress today, is the issue of higher education, and the role that tertiary education institutions can play in sometimes quite remote areas, quite unlikely areas, at least, as far as our normal understanding of higher education goes. So this research is about Niigata Prefecture and an island off Niigata Prefecture called Sado Island. It's in collaboration with Professor Yasuyuki Sato of Niigata University. And, I'll just present some of my research, and maybe out of that research, hopefully, that will elicit some questions from you, and we can engage in some kind of a discussion. Kind of to introduce you really, or summarize the problem, that population shrinkage has been proceeding in Japan for rural areas and embracing progressively larger settlements in the course of its advance. So in the 1950s, population shrinkage affected small, but very rural communities. But as the population, as that has progressed, so progressively larger communities are experiencing shrinkage. And from 2005, the national population began to decline, such that even some quite large regional cities are in the process now of encountering regional shrinkage, or population shrinkage for the first time. Population shrinkage and aging has a number of accompanying consequences for the people in those communities, and also for the local governments, local authorities in dealing with those situations. I want to focus first of all on Niigata Prefecture in the national context, and then look at selected settlements within Niigata Prefecture, and then look at Sado Island in particular. The picture you see
And then I want to round off with some discussions of a new educational venture in Southall, which is a very interesting venture and may help the island communities with some kind of stability. So, a summary of my analysis is that first of all, regional depopulation has been a predictable outcome of Japan's national developmental project, and this national developmental project actually goes back as far back to the 19th century, with the opening up of Japan to trade with the Western world in the mid-19th century. But particularly in the post-Second World War era, that national developmental project really took off and reached its zenith, I suppose, in annual rates of national economic growth of 10% or so during the 1960s and the 70s. What I want to say is that amid all of this, the decline of the population in regional areas, is that the future need not necessarily be bleak. I think it's inevitable that under this national population decline, that some regional communities will indeed disappear. But it need not be, the future need not be bleak for all of them. And this is what I want to explore later on. In the form of exploring tertiary education, the role that tertiary education institutions may play in remote rural regions. So some of the current regional community difficulties that are being faced in Japan are structured out migration to metropolitan areas, and Mr. Fujishima talked about that earlier on today. Chronically low birth rate and an ageing of the population, and breakdown in familial and community relations as a result of these things. And we can see here that there's a sad, really a poignant photograph of an abandoned family home and farm, and which is now essentially home to a population of feral cats. And there are many, many buildings like this in Southern Island, but also many buildings throughout regional and rural Japan that are like this, abandoned businesses and homes and farmsteads and so on. There's also reduced local tax revenues and reductions in redistributed income from metropolitan regions, obsolete public infrastructure and reduced investment in the regional economy, predatory substitution of independent local businesses by corporate chains based in Tokyo and Osaka and beyond, and as a result of that, casualization of employment conditions, and reductions in visitor numbers, the abandonment of residential and business properties, declining the quality of the built environment, and severe damage also to the natural environment has been occurring over previous decades. So some pretty difficult circumstances in many areas. And really at the centre of all of this, I suppose, cycle of difficulties is the population decline. We've had the emergence of a hyper-aging society. That's where more than 21% of the population is over the age of 65. We have remote hamlets populated by very old single-person households, and a lack of a basic ability to live a decent life for many citizens. And the emergence and social collapse and community abandonment. So I just want to look at some of how this might